All right, it is just after 3. We are going to get rolling. I'm a little tired this week, so hopefully everything comes together. If anything does not make sense, please let me know. I'm extra tired because it's been a week. It's been a week. Let me tell you. All right, so as you can see in the presentation on your screen, if you are watching the live video, this week we are talking about taglines, which is what I promised after last week when we discussed hooks. So, this week we are talking taglines. So, taglines are a single part of a multitude of different kinds of lines that are out there. There are a number of different kinds of lines in copywriting. So, as you can see, we have taglines, log lines, and through lines. In screenwriting, you are also going to see something called slug lines, but those are less marketing and more explanatory. Right, that's a tagline. So taglines are usually 1 to 3 sentences, typically less than 50 words. I have about 150 characters. The sizzly for target market comes from a marketer friend of mine, so they should sizzle for your target market, which means that if you are writing a nonfiction book about trains, I'm probably not going to be super excited about your tagline, but it should be really exciting for people who are your target market. I am not your target market, so it doesn't need to sizzle for everybody, but it should catch the eye of the people you're trying to catch the eye of. That is super important. In addition to that, sometimes they're written by beta readers who might compare your book in an interesting way. For example, if I could use as a tagline, what are you doing? I could use Dresden meets Lucifer meets Supernatural as a tagline for my book because people have described my writing as that before. Now, that isn't the tagline I would use on my Amazon page. Oh, there goes my cat. But it is a tagline that could be used in some of my marketing to describe my book. So it could be a very useful thing for me to have. Also, those are 3 comparative works that people can connect to. And also, the tagline could be a description of tone, and my cat throwing things on the floor, I guess. I don't know what's going on behind the green screen, and I'm kind of afraid to find out. But as a description of tone, like I said, Lucifer, Supernatural, and Bright meet each other, and why are you— No! Stop that! Sorry, I'm having— What are you doing back there? Troublesome child. The video— Yeah, he's helping. The video may get interesting at this point. Stop it! Enough! No claws! I've had it with you. This could get real interesting. So, it can be just a description of tone, if necessary. Yeah, enough per healing time for chaos and problems. So the next type of line we are going to find is called a log line. Those are usually used to describe who, what, when, where, why, and how. They're oftentimes longer than a tagline. They are— think of an elevator pitch, more or less. They're a little bit expanded. And then you have a through line, which is in 2 sentences at most. You explain the critical elements of your story and theme. Yes, a catastrophe. You are entirely correct. We'll see what happens when I start trying to edit the video. Things could get funny in the background. I guess we'll find out. But those are the 3 kinds of— Would you stop that? Those are the 3 kinds of lines that you are likely to see in copywriting for books. Nope. Oh, it's crazy cat time. That's the thing. He's currently chasing his tail on the couch. Because that's a normal thing for a 10-year-old cat to do. Yeah. Okay, so those are the 3 kinds of lines you are likely to see in copywriting for books. There are a lot of other kinds of lines that are inherent in copywriting, and if you start looking up copywriting, you will start finding them. But these are the 3 I think are going to be the most pertinent to authors. So that's what we're going to discuss here, mostly focusing on taglines. So These three different lines have different target markets. We have log lines, which are mostly designed to get the attention of agents, marketers, and publishers. Again, it's kind of your elevator pitch. If you're querying, you're probably going to want to use a log line in the query when somebody says, hey, what's your book about? I don't know if you can hear the chaos going on out in the hallway or the screaming cat in the background, but things could get funny here quick. Because sometimes when he gets like this, he will decide my desk is a playground. The through line, which again describes the themes and the important, ideas in your book, is for agents and editors, and a tagline is for customers. Those are the three target markets for these. So, log lines are agents and marketers and publishers. It's your elevator pitch. It's probably going to be in your query. A through line is for an editor or an agent who wants to learn more about your book and really kind of centers on the journey. And taglines are for the people looking to buy your book. Those are the three markets each of those attaches to. So, this particular presentation, we are focusing on taglines because we're doing a series here on marketing your book. We started with hooks. This week is taglines. Next week, we're going to talk about blurbs because they all kind of play together. So a tagline is typically the first thing a reader will see on the sales page. It's not always put there. Taglines are also often put on the front cover of a book if you're looking at a physical one. On Amazon, it's likely to be the first line on the book, or it could be on a movie poster. Stop that, you little pain in my butt. Ooh, you're trouble. It is, again, a very sizzly, snappy piece of copy. It's supposed to entice readers to want to read the rest of the blurb. The entire function of a tagline is to get the person reading it wanting to read more. It'll get them into the rest of the blurb, it'll get them interested in the movie, make them want to watch the trailer. The entire point of a tagline is to draw attention from the customer, the person you're trying to sell to, into the rest of the text. If it doesn't do that, it has failed. So, that is the entire point of a tagline. Stop it! The tagline for this video is going to be cat problems and how. Stop it! Oh, I'm gonna get the spray bottle. Pardon me for a moment. Hey. Ahem. Right. So, this piece of copy is intended, as I said, to entice readers to read the blurb. It needs to draw the attention in. It also is a signal of the genre that this is writing in. So the tagline should give you a very strong indication of what genre the book is. If you don't really give a strong indication of what genre the book is in the tagline, it's not going to grab attention, and it isn't going to reach the target audience as powerfully as it would otherwise. Thank you, lead. Imperfect. Ugh. And finally, a tagline is just a hook. It is not a synopsis. So you wouldn't want to have a tagline be a log line, which is telling people the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the story. A tagline is not that. So don't make the mistake of trying to make it that. It is just a hook to get attention. An example of some taglines that I have compiled from top best-selling novels of their genre. You have The Hunger Games, winning will make you famous, losing means certain death. A Song of Ice and Fire, of course, winter is coming. Ready Player One is a world at stake, the quest for the ultimate prize, are you ready? And finally, from Clariel, does the walker choose the path, or the path the walker? As you can see, all of those little snippets, they tell a little bit about the genre. If you aren't familiar with these books, in fact, I'm willing to bet most of you don't know what genre Clariel is. Do you want to take a guess what genre Clariel is, just based on that tagline? Just as an example of taglines. I know, of course, what genre it is, because it comes from one of my favorite authors, so I've read the book a lot. Suspense? No, it's not suspense, but that's a really good guess. Angel, you nailed it right on the head. Yep, fantasy. That's what's coming in. Yes, it is young adult fantasy. Though it does contain a lot of suspense elements, Willenbird, so you're not wrong. It is a very tense series and is kind of suspensey. Yeah, it is very dark. The series is dark, so you're not wrong about that either. But as you can see from just that, you've got an idea of the tone and an idea of the genre. And that is an example of an effective tagline. So you can tell in some of these exactly what genre it is, even without knowing anything about the book. Which means doing its job. Your taglines should be similar. You should be able to make a nod to the genre just based on the way you word your tagline. Which I know sounds complicated, but it's not too bad. Remember what we talked about last week with hooks? Some hooks are really effective in certain genres, and it doesn't need to be 100% bang on the nose, but at least 50% of the answers were exactly correct. And the other two were correct about the tone of the story, even if they weren't correct about the genre. So, with that in mind, it's an example of effective taglines. And as per last week, from Book Blurbs Unleashed by Robert J. Ryan, we have the types of hooks, the open loop, the fact, the statement, the say what, with exactly that many A's, the poetic hook, contrast hooks, and the direct question. Again, those were from last week. If you don't remember, either go check out last week's video or poke me when we are done if you haven't, or you can ask me any questions if you have specific ones. These are directly out of his book. Those names are directly out of his book. I claim no ownership of them. So, with us talking about taglines, what are some elements of really effective taglines? They're short, 150 characters or less than 50 words. And the reason I say 150 characters, if you can possibly manage it, is Amazon ads have a length of allowing only 150 characters. That includes spaces and punctuation. If you can get your tagline to be under that 150 character limit, that means that you can use it as the text for an Amazon ad, which will be important when you're marketing. You can have multiple taglines for your book. That is perfectly okay, but you're going to at least want to have a couple of them that you can use in an Amazon ad if you are going to be taking one out. So practice making them really tight, really snappy, and just short. Second, as I keep hammering, an effective tagline is going to make readers want to continue to read the rest of the blurb or the rest of the marketing pitch, whatever it is. An effective tagline is going to draw people into the rest of your marketing copy. An effective tagline is going to use one or multiple of the types of hooks we discussed on the last slide and last week. So that is important. It is going to contain genre-specific elements to indicate to your readers who this is for. If you write a beautifully sizzly tagline for a romance novel, it's going to read as sizzly to romance readers. People who don't like romance as a genre might not care about it, which is okay. You are trying to reach your target market. Remember what we talked about last week with that reader avatar? You're trying to target that person. So, make sure that your tagline is going to target that individual. And finally, your tagline should show a little bit about the tone of the narrative and maybe a bit about the author's voice. That doesn't mean that if your story is written in first person that your tagline needs to be written in first person, but it should sound like you as the author. It's kind of important that it reflects yourself. So that is an element of this. So those are the effective parts of taglines that I have identified through my research. Does anybody have any questions so far? I just want to give folks a chance because this has been really challenging. How do you do that in only 150 characters? Okay, let me pull up an example. Hold on. I actually have one that I use. Let's see if I can find you. Is it this? No, I don't think so. It might be in a different folder. I can give you the one that I used for Fallen. I came up with a really snappy tagline for it. Let me see if I can get it to open. My computer does not like the fact that I'm running so many recording programs at once. So the copy that I ended up using for my novel, the tagline that I have kept, is: a fallen angel faces life on Earth, a murder and a kidnapping. Some days it's do or die. Today, it's probably die. That is the tagline that I used for my novel, Fallen, that I have published. So, that right there is an example of 150 characters. You can do that for any novel, and that's not a tiny amount of words. Like, 150 characters feels really small, but when you start really working it and workshopping it, it comes out pretty good. And mine right there, it shows, it's an indication of, at the very least, there's some magic. It's a fallen angel. We're talking about murder and kidnapping, life on Earth. It sounds kind of fantasy-like and may well be modern. Some days it's do or die, today it's probably die. It creates high stakes and is indicative of suspense, which is my novel. I wrote an urban fantasy suspense. So it is possible. It takes practice. And we can definitely do some practice here. And there's nothing saying that you only need to that you only need to write one tagline. And I came to that tagline right there after workshopping a number of them. So I can give you, here is an example of all of the taglines that I came up with for my novel when I was going through Brian Cohen's Amazon Ads course. There are 6 there. And those are all 150 characters or less. So they aren't, it is very possible, but, and again, some of those are stronger, some of those are weaker. They're not all great. They're not all gold. I'm still learning, but I really like the, some days it's do or die, today it's probably die. I think that is the highest stakes one, and it's the one that everyone responded to the best when I was doing the ads course. There is another, yep, I like that one too. And that's kind of the nice thing, is the taglines, you don't need to just have one. You can use multiple different taglines on different marketing media. So the prayer and the cocktail umbrella one, I could put that on an Instagram post with my book and use that as a marketing post, or on Twitter. And also, Twitter has the character limit too, and you could use all of these on Twitter as well, which is kind of nice. So, keeping them really short, really snappy, and making people go, huh, is the effect of a tagline. Do I suggest puns in taglines? If it fits the tone of your book, go for it. If it doesn't fit the tone of your book, don't do it. So the Xanth series, which is a series of very punny, kind of cringy, if I'm honest, novels that were written in, I think, the 90s, early thousands. I was really into them, and the entire series was extremely punny, and all of his taglines were puns, all of them, because it fit the tone and the genre that he was writing. So if you want to use puns for your tagline, go for it, but make sure it fits the tone of your book. If your book doesn't meet that expectation, don't use it in a tagline. Because remember what we talked about hooks last week? The hook must live up to the content. So if your hook promises something punny and funny and lighthearted, and your book is about war, doom, gloom, and death, you've got a mismatch there that's going to cause some bad cognitive dissonance. So that is definitely something to be aware of as we continue through this. Next up, we have how to create a tagline. So one of the first things I strongly recommend doing is look at books in your genre. So look for books in your genre, look at the taglines. I looked at the Dresden novels when I was planning my taglines for Fallen. Look at comparable works. Warhammer children's books. I really don't want to think too hard about that because it hurts my brain with what little I know about Warhammer. One of these things is not like the others. Anyhow, as far as taglines go, look at comparative works to what you are writing and trying to sell. Wow, that's a thing that exists. Great. You can For those who are watching on YouTube, let me switch over to the group chat for a minute so you can see exactly what we're talking about. Right there. There are apparently Warhammer children's novels. That's a thing the world did not need. Anyhow, back to the presentation. The second part of an effective tagline and how we're working on creating taglines is to identify key elements of your story and highlight them in the tagline. For Fallen, obviously, I wanted to talk about the murder and the kidnapping and the fact that the main character is new to the world and hasn't lived in it very long and needs to figure out how to survive here. Those are extremely important elements of my story, and they're kind of the core elements of my story. It doesn't give away everything about the plot, but it does kind of set a little bit of a scene, so I identified those elements as the things that needed to be in the tagline. And all of the taglines I wrote highlighted at least some or a combination thereof of those elements. Next, you want to think about what type of hook works best for your audience and what you think you would enjoy writing the most. The reason I mention enjoyment is because if you're writing fantasy and you want to try and go with the poetic hook like we talked about last week, but you know nothing about poetry and kind of hate it, it's not going to be fun for you. Writing taglines should actually be kind of fun. And it seems really intimidating, but once you get into it, it is a good time. It can be really fun to kind of play with language and think of fun ways to describe your book, and you should enjoy it. Like, spend some time with it. Yeah, I know, fun. It doesn't sound like fun. It sounds like pulling teeth to some people, but I promise you, it actually can be fun. So yeah, I think this week we're going to talk about some taglines and maybe workshop them with each other, and we'll get to that at the very end here. Next, you want to try a few different kinds of hooks, or try combining them. Again, referring to last week's video, those hooks that I went through. Choose some hooks that you like, or some techniques that you like, and try writing a hook. If you want to challenge yourself, try writing a hook in each of the different styles I mentioned, or, again, play mix and match, see what happens. Who knows? That is going to help you kind of internalize A Tale of Love, Death, and Squirrels. See, I like that. It makes me ask questions, and it does sound like fun. It very much fits your book. So that could work brilliantly. It doesn't really ask a question, but it does sound funny. Poisons are forever. That's a neat tagline. That makes me ask, like, okay, who's getting poisoned and why? So those are great. And so, yeah, definitely spend some time, have fun with it. Oh no. So yeah, you want to have some fun with it and enjoy the process, and you don't need to write and craft the one perfect tagline. Write a bunch of them, and then workshop them with other people and see which ones people connect to the best. Also, make sure that you are asking people who enjoy and read your genre about your tagline. If you are asking me about a tagline you're really excited about your nonfiction book on trains, I might be able to give you some marketing advice, but since I do not really care about trains that much, I'm not going to be the person who gets really excited about it. So talk to people who read your genre and ask them about your taglines. Yeah, that could work, but I'm... Wow, guys. So yeah, just toy around with ideas, and if you want to take some practice, if you want to really practice, try writing taglines for books you've read and really love. So practice writing taglines for other people's books. Like, give it a go, and remember that this is a skill. Thomas the Dank Engine, oh my gosh. Remember that this is a skill that takes time to develop. Right, exactly. So, but also, workshop it with people who like dark fantasy, not just one. They don't have to like the exact specifications of your novel, but they have to read the genre, at the very least. They have to read books in that genre. Finally, ask for critique and feedback from other authors, particularly, and I'm going to hammer this home yet again, people in your genre. So you're going to want to talk to the folks who are going to be the ones who would be in your target market pool. People who like fantasy, talk to fantasy authors or in fantasy readers about your tagline, and see if you can get some feedback. Try and connect with folks. Uh-oh, Nidnid's in trouble. So that is roughly how you create a tagline. So identify the parts of your story you need to highlight in your tagline. Identify what kind of hook you think is going to work best for you, and you can experiment with all of them. And read books in your genre to get an idea, and read taglines of books in your genre to get an idea of what is out there. And I strongly suggest that you look at the best sellers in your genre. Don't look at people who aren't selling well, because their taglines may not be that effective. Spend your time focusing on the top dogs in your genres and really look at them and see what sells, because those folks, this is a free marketing lesson, the people who are the top sellers in the genre, they did something right. And it's important. Nid, Cyber Dragon Punk, that sounds like a cyberpunk in fantasy. Look for, what's it called? Shadowrun books. They are going to fit into your idea. Also look at the taglines for Anne McCaffrey's books, because she does a lot of melding of fantasy and sci-fi, and Anne McCaffrey is one of the greats. So there are, in fact, some comparable works out there. And if you can't find books that are comparable, look at animes, look at TV shows, look at movies, look at comics. Find media of any kind in your genre and see if you can hunt down the taglines they used, because those are going to be marketing to people in your genre. So if you don't know too many books that sort of hit the sweet spot that you're looking for, you can broaden your approach. It's okay. You don't need to stick just to books, because marketing any sort of creative media is kind of one of those things that is across the board. It's going to be effective for a large number of people. Now, here are some common pitfalls when writing a tagline. Yeah, Poisons Are Forever does sound like a murder mystery book, but it's still intriguing, and it did draw me in and made me ask, ooh, what's going on here? So it has elements of something good, even if it isn't exactly perfect. It is interesting. So that's a good tagline, Aquamarine Rose. I like that one. So here are some common pitfalls that I have seen in taglines by authors. Number one, too long. If your tagline is long, your reader's going to lose interest by the time they reach the end of it. A tagline needs to be tight and snappy. As Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. You want this to be super tight. A tagline that gives away too much information. If your tagline turns into a log line, which again tells who, what, where, when, why, and how of a story, it's not doing its job. It's not doing what it needs to be doing to capture readers. A tagline that doesn't effectively target the genre. If you are writing, say, Poisons Are Forever, and you put that on the cover of a romance novel, there's obviously a mismatch there. I mean, you can definitely have some really dark romance novels, but usually that sounds more like one of the English murder mysteries, which it may or may not be. But so if you're not effectively targeting your genre, the tagline isn't working. Is the tagline boring? If the tagline does not capture the attention of the person who's reading it, well, then it's not doing its job. Again, you need to keep them interesting. And they need to be interested. Sorry, they need to be interesting to your target market. I think I have allergies going on, so forgive me if I have to sniff or what have you. So that is a thing. A tagline that is a bait and switch, where you promise one thing and have another. So, for example, if you promise puns in your story, like you use a really punny tagline, and your story is not in any way comedic and doesn't contain puns, the tagline is going to be a big mismatch with the story and isn't going to work. So make sure that your taglines pair with your story. I've seen a lot of taglines that are clickbaity, which sort of ties into the last one, a bait and switch, where they overpromise a story and underdeliver. Like, I have read some really atrocious indie books that had excellent taglines, and the story that I ended up reading did not live up to the tagline. In fact, they were like supposed to be action-packed adventure books, and the author spent a very, very long time doing absolutely nothing. And the story was not action-packed or adventure-y, and was in fact dead boring. Which is an issue with writing, but again, the tagline promised something that the content didn't deliver. No, in fact, this is not a hit piece against George R.R. Martin. I said indies. I do take issue with George R.R. Martin, but I'm not going to take swipes at him for his tagline, because Winter is Coming is something that is talked about a lot in his series, so it was, in fact, correct. Though I do feel similarly about George R.R. Martin and his love affair with excessive description, which is not a secret to anybody. A tagline that attempts to be really poetic and is not effective is not... I'm just going to refrain from making the jokes that I could be making about Winter and Coming, okay? We're not making those jokes. This is a family show. So a tagline that is an attempt at being really poetic and does not, in fact, land. I've seen romance and fantasy taglines are usually the culprits for this one. When a tagline attempt is very poetic and then sort of gets lost in the weeds somewhere and doesn't work. There's nothing wrong with poetry, but remember that poetic hooks require a great deal of skill with poetry. So don't try and write a poetic hook if you don't know poetry. And poetry can be extremely effective, but in order for the poetry to be effective, you need to be good at poetry. It sounds like the tagline of a bad comedy. Winter is coming, so it will get stabbed. Excellent. So, that is one of the big pitfalls. Again, kind of tying into the last one, a tagline that attempts to be a poetic tagline, and clearly the writer doesn't understand poetry or doesn't know poetic forms, and so it just comes across as either whiny emo high school poetry or sort of talking down to the reader, because I've read taglines that are like all alliteration and read like a children's book for a dark high fantasy novel, and it doesn't work. Oh, is it back to that again? Are we back to... Yeah. Are you sure? Nah. Ahem. I have feline assistance and interest in the background, so we will see how that goes again. A murder mystery like no other. You're right. If a murder mystery like no other, it's about crow research. Now, if the tagline that would capture people about crows because it's fun, so it could. But make sure that the poetry and your understanding of poetic forms works if you're going to go the poetic route. And finally, a tagline that tries to be funny and isn't. If a tagline is attempting to be funny and fails miserably, all that's going to do is not drive traffic to your book. And I'm not saying that isn't funny. Make sure it's funny to your target audience. It may not be funny to somebody who's not in your target audience, which is fine, but make sure your target audience is going to be like, ha, a murder mystery like no other, and have it be about crow research, and that would be hilarious to most biologists, I imagine. That would be great, and it could be very effective with a target audience. But if it was not going to be funny for the target audience, it's better to avoid it. So those are some of the big pitfalls that I have seen in tagline writing. So, how do you practice writing taglines? I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wrote a slide on it, so gosh darn it, I'm using it. Choose media in your genre and write taglines for it. So, pick a book, a movie, a comic, it doesn't matter what media it is, but it should be something you know, and practice writing taglines for it. Just throw out taglines and write something snappy and fun. It will help you learn, because as I said in the last presentation, these skills, copywriting is a skill. It isn't something you can just magically do without training, because copywriting is part of marketing which does take practice, time, and study. And so doing it right off the bat and expecting it to be perfect, not gonna work. You need to get the joke taglines out of your brain. Write them all out. Write out the joke taglines. That's fine. Write them, laugh about them, and then, you know what? They might be fun newsletter fodder for later. It might be fun for readers who'd be in on the joke. Grandma 2. Oh my gosh. So that is one way. Practice identifying key elements of stories in your genre and think about how you would use those elements. Again, much like with your own book, you'd be pulling out what the key elements of that story are and utilizing those. That is important. If you feel like you can't really do that with a book, do it with a TV show. Write a tagline for a single episode of a TV show and pull out the elements of that single episode of the TV show. That's an okay way of practicing this. You don't need to practice just on books. Because like I said before when we were talking about media, in this case, tagline is a tagline is a tagline. It doesn't really matter what media you're pulling from. Make sure that you can do it. You can also practice outside your genre if you want to, practice other genres. That could be fun, and you can see how you can make the different genres, the taglines, feel very different by using different genre elements and keys. So that can be a fun exercise. You can read articles on writing marketing copy and try those various techniques. I, again, advise buying the book that I referenced earlier, the book Blurbs Unleashed. It was really good. It's not extremely long, and while it didn't teach me anything earth-shattering, I did go to college and study marketing in college. So it underlined a lot of the principles and ideas I already knew from school, but if I hadn't had that experience, it would have been an excellent introductory piece for those. And it did teach me stuff about blurb writing that I really appreciate. So it has good information in it for beginners or folks who have a little more experience. That is a good tagline lead. So next you want to write maybe 3 to 5 taglines for a work in progress you're playing with and workshop them with some of the other authors. I mean, our writing group over here, the workshop, try them out, test them here. play with it. Throw out ideas. Bounce things off each other. Hey, can you tell me what genre that this tagline is for? Just practice it. Wordcounter.net is a free website that will count characters for you. And you can use that to practice sticking within that 150 characters. You can go longer than 150 characters on a tagline. I'm not going to tell you you're not allowed to, because different marketing mediums will let you use longer length pieces of text. But the 150 characters I'm strongly suggesting is, again, so you can make it an Amazon ad, which may be very important for you later on after you've published your book. So it is an important thing to keep in mind that you are able to do, even if you write some taglines for some other places that are longer. Keep that 150 characters thing in your mind. Wordcounter.net is free and will let you practice staying within those constraints. And it counts like just characters, including spaces, including punctuation. It counts all of them. And finally, consider taking a course on copywriting. Sign up for some of the free workshops. There is, in fact, another Brian Cohen Amazon ads workshop coming up. He does them quarterly, and they are free. I'm going to be doing it again because I really found it useful and helped me understand Amazon ads. If you are not at a point yet where you are a published author or ready to publish, you may find it less useful because he talks a lot about how to use the Amazon ad dashboard. And if you don't have a product and you can't get into that yet, you might be able to learn a lot from the experience, but until you do it, it's not going to be as useful. So I strongly suggest that anybody who has a book out, check those out. If you don't have a book out yet, it may not be your thing. But also the Writing Wives, they did a workshop on Facebook ads that was really good. And that, again, a lot of these are free. Hello. Sorry, I'm still having cat problems. He's apparently in a mood today. And there are also a ton of YouTube videos on copywriting that you can watch. And the 20 Books to 50K conference on YouTube is excellent. There is a lot of really valuable content on there. So you can get more information, even free, about copywriting and learn more about how copywriting works and how to do it, because again, it is a separate skill. To those of you who don't know what 20 Books to 50K is, it is a Facebook group that has conferences, and it teaches a certain kind of mindset, and it is about marketing books ethically as authors. It's really, really useful. So that is something to be aware of. And finally, why do taglines matter? Why am I telling you to learn all of this? What the heck is the point? First off, I know for a lot of authors, marketing feels like it's kind of anathema to writing. Like it's a separate thing, but copywriting is still writing. It is different, but in some ways it's the same. It's going to feel, different to some extent, but it isn't. You can't pull them apart, because in order to sell your books, you need to get good at marketing. And marketing is about writing things that impact your target market, which you already kind of know as an author, or should know. A tagline combined with an effective blurb and other thing will make a really important selling point. It will help you sell books. Learning this skill will have direct financial implications on your sales. Learning how to write taglines and effective copy will give you a significant edge in the indie market. And I know writers are looking for a way to get an edge in the market because the market is so oversaturated. There are so many books, and getting noticed and standing out can be really challenging. And learning how to write effective copy is going to help give you more of an edge and help you kind of cut through the chaff and reach people with your book. So it is an extremely important skill and should not be skimped on. Next, a creative and effective tool for marketing and help you create marketing images faster and easier. If you have a selection of taglines that you've created and workshopped with people and are prepared, you can make marketing images for your books using Canva, BookBrush, all these other services. You can make them faster and you don't have to spend a bunch of time thinking about, oh, what do I need to put on this? How do I tell people about this? Or marketing tweets or other pieces of marketing. You can reuse the taglines however you like, and you're going to be able to make them faster, more effectively. The more you practice, the better you become at it, and all of those things, again, translate to sales, which is ultimately what most of us are looking for, is to sell our book for money. And finally, taglines might be used on merch if you decide to go that route. Your tagline might be a really cool thing to toss on a t-shirt. You know, I don't know how many of you remember The Matrix when it came out, but What is the Matrix was on all sorts of merchandise before the Matrix movie came out because they were really pushing the hype. Or I have a poster, a Dresden poster that says, "Never mess with a wizard when he's wizarding." That is a quote from a Dresden book, but it makes an excellent tagline. And it's perfect, and it's very Dresden. I have that poster. The marketing worked on me. I purchased the poster. So things like that, it can work into those sorts of things if you end up deciding you want to do merchandise. So that's one of the things that taglines can also be used for outside of just your Amazon sales page. All right, are there any questions? We have about 10 minutes left. Are there any questions that you find folks have that you would like to ask in regards to taglines? That's a decent tagline, Aquamarine. You're going to want to consider your capitalization. Do not capitalize for emphasis. Poisons Are Forever sounds really cool. Yeah, you can go ahead and practice. Throw out some taglines. This is going to be recorded, so we can workshop them a little bit together. Feel free to toss out some ideas. You know, let's talk about stuff. You saw mine. They're not visible in the video, so I will put them in the chat again. These are practice taglines, some of which I used, some of which I did not, for my book. So they are all options. So let's take a look at some taglines. You're looking for post-apocalyptic Turkish royalty drama. Okay, so maybe add society isn't forever, but poisons are. Something like that. Like you can so think about adding some stuff to that tagline. Like poisons are forever is excellent, but you have a lot more characters you can use. Life is not fair. That is an interesting tagline, but if you're writing it for your book's lead, it doesn't say fantasy to me. That sounds more like non-fantasy opinion, editorial kind of piece. Philosophy, yep. Prometheus made it look so easy. Aquamarine Rose, are you writing something that is going to be Greek-inspired? Okay. Well, what is your genre, Aquamarine? Let's talk about your genre. You're writing fantasy, right? That's not a bad tagline, Nid. Okay, you're writing a high fantasy. If it's not about Greek high fantasy, specifically, or Prometheus isn't a character in your story, think about how... remember, you want to think about how it's going to reflect what's in your story. So instead of necessarily starting with a tagline, pull out the more important... what are the most important elements of your stories? Like, this is a question for all of you. Like, list the 3 or 4 most important elements of your story. Like, murder, intrigue, romance, war. Like, pick a few words that are the most key points of your book. Poison, drama, introspection. Okay. Um, so poison is forever. What does that say about introspection? Or what can you add to that to have it speak to introspection? Let me preface all of this studying by saying I am not a marketing expert per se. I did study it in school. I've studied it since then, but I am not an expert tagline writer. So all of this is caveated on the fact that I'm not a professional at this particular thing. However, I do know some. Memories fade, but poisons are forever. That sounds really good. That sounds very interesting. History fades, but poisons are forever. Ooh, that one's nice too. That one definitely talks about like future. Feel free to pick my brain. That's what we're here for. I like history fades, but poisons are forever. That's a really good. That's a good tagline. Definitely makes me ask questions. It seems like it's more current or maybe futuristic, and does seem like intrigue. So that's a really effective tagline, at least in my opinion. I like it. Um, let's see. Yes, definitely do. That's a really good one. And it might be something you use on some marketing stuff someday. I mean, I guess you could go that route, lead. That's an interesting idea. If I saw that on the picture on a cover of a book with hummingbirds, I would be very intrigued and kind of disturbed, which sounds like it's what you're going for. So, yes. But how about the themes in your books? Like let's get back to that. What are the like themes in your books? Willem Bird came up with three of them. What about everybody else? What are the three or four points that you really need to keep in your book? Lead, I know one of yours is going to be squirrels. It had better be squirrels. If it isn't, I will be mad. This is also open to everybody else. Angel, do you have any that you're working on? All right, I think I'm going to end the recording here. We're going to continue workshopping some lines. It's going to be fine. We're going to have some fun doing this, and I'm happy to stay on voice and hang out and do some more workshopping. But I think I'm going to wrap up the recording and lesson here. I think I conveyed what I needed to about taglines. Remember, next week we are going to be talking about blurbs, which is yet another piece, but sort of just an expansion on the things we've been talking about, the principles we've been discussing, using hooks and being snappy and keeping things really tight. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's workshop some more taglines and let's see what fun we can come up with. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody is getting information out of this that they're going to use and find helpful. So we will talk more about blurbs next week.